From time immemorable, from the earliest beginnings of modern society, we can see a man grappling with the unfathomable, the sublime. Today, anthropologists have analyzed common patterns in the imagination of these incomprehensible phenomena across different cultures. One such embodiment of the unfathomable is the monster that we can find in almost every folk, starting from the different cradles of civilization. From the earliest inscriptions found on walls of the cave to the modern novel, we can see these ideas getting institutionalized and given new forms by the creative strivings of human beings. After the development of modern cinema, German cinema was the first to bring the monsters on screen, but it was only after the American studio, particularly Universal, started encashing the need for an escape from the harsh realities of the Great Depression that the golden age of monsters dawned. As a result, we got the classics like Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman. But the period was much more than them, with many engulfed by their popularity. Today we will look at 10 such gems lost in time that will open a Pandora's box of monsters for you. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Tarantula. You would have probably guessed who the monster is from the title, and yes, it is the arachnid who starts our list of monsters. When the giant ant props used in Warner Brothers then miserably failed to convince the audience, inventiveness took a tweak with Tarantula's release in 1955, when the creators cast a live tarantula spider with a bit of camera trick mixed with cheeky usage of props for close-up shots. The tarantulas were largely convincing. Moving to the story, we are introduced to something mysterious when a severely deformed man is found dead in Arizona. Dr. Matt Hastings is called to examine the body. We find out that the dead man is a biological research scientist, Eric Jacob, a friend of the doctor. We are given a hint about what is to come. Dr. Gerald Deemer, Jacob's colleague, says Jacobs died of acromegaly. Nevertheless, Jacobs is left confused as, according to him, it would take years to develop that level of acromegaly. Soon, we see Deemer's lab, where it all unfolds, as the experimentation with creating a super nutrient goes wrong, resulting in animals getting enormously big and continuously increasing in size. At the same time, human beings are getting deformed in the lab. Things go out of control as a fire prompts a golden retriever-sized tarantula to escape the laboratory. What follows is absolute mayhem across the town, and subsequently, the human beings fighting off the science gone wrong. Although, like many of the 50s movies, the film addresses the anxieties associated with the rapid advancements in science. We see a different trope in Tarantula. Here, we have a well-intentioned scientist's experiments going wrong, rather than spiraling down to a dystopia due to a nuclear weapons or an antagonist scientist. But does the intention wash off the evil science gave rise to in that period? I'm not really sure. What do you think? Finding an entire civilization of the Sumerian descendants underground sounds quite imaginative for a 1950 Universal monster movie, right? Well, this is what forms the premise of the Mole People. Notwithstanding the potential of the premise and memorable moment, it was let down by the fact that it was a B movie. Perhaps a few extra dollars could have boosted the film's status further. The movie begins with a description by Dr. Frank Baxter. And mind it, he is a real person and not a character. He talks about the hollow earth theory, popular in the late 18th century, put forward by John Sims and Cyrus T, put forward by John Syme and Cyrus T. The theory part is kept short. We are taken to the capturing in motion when Dr. Roger Bentley and Dr. Judd Bellarmine stumble upon a race of Sumerian albinos deep under the earth. Their ancestors were forced underneath by a flood that decimated Mesopotamia centuries in a different time. Centuries of evolution have made them susceptible to light, even one coming from the flashlight of the scientists. Before you do an "oh, the poor Sumerian," they kept a mutant humanoid moleman race as their slave in harsh conditions to harvest mushrooms. Now it's up to you to decide who the monsters in the film really are. Anomaly in humankind who usually form the monster on many premises, or the Sumerian humans themselves. The film's exploration of a bygone era is commendable for the period, as it takes us to an ancient culture by introducing the practices, being portrayed as worshipping the ancient Mesopotamian gods and goddesses. The rest of the practices and the complex interaction between three different races are left for you to explore without much spoilers. Werewolf of London. I don't think that there is a need to introduce the 1941 Universal classic Wolfman to you guys, but the real question is how many of you have heard about the OG werewolf movie, Werewolf of London? Adept, the warning that the trailer gives us, it stalks the earth today, as it did in the Middle Ages, paves the way for a new monster in the list of horrors. Moving to the story, we see the English bot Wilfred Glendon on a research trip to Tibet. He is bitten by an unnamed humanoid creature while looking for a rare plant, Marifasa lumina lupina. Back in London, a fellow botanist, Dr. Yogami, tells a dubious Glendon about werewolfery and how the flower of Marifasa Glendon acquired is a temporary antidote for it. The unnamed creature that Glendon encountered in Tibet was actually a werewolf. We see Glendon's hands growing furs under the moon lamp he was using to nourish Marifasa, but with a quick reflex, he injects the sap of the new blossom, transforming his hand back to normal. But soon Glendon starts running out of the blossom as someone is secretly stealing the flowers. The situation deteriorates rapidly, leading to deaths and even putting the lives of those close to Glendon at risk. There are a few reasons ascribed to the film's limited popularity, one of them being the failure to get the hottest horror actors of the 1930s, Boris Karloff or Bela Lugosi, on board. Though the film did help Jack Pierce to create Make, rejected in this, but iconically used in Wolfman after 6 years. Perhaps, under different circumstances, reversing these reasons would have elevated the film to the acclaim it deserved. 4. The Mummy's Hand. One of the reasons for many of the original Universal monsters to get accommodated into the pop culture and stay classic was their sequels and remakes released in regular gaps. This facilitated the monsters to remain live in people's minds, and also the previous releases to enter discussions. The Mummy's Hand was actually part of this formula, the monster getting reintroduced. Today, with a pile of mummy movies around, most of us already know what is in store, an expedition to the ancient pyramids of Egypt in search of glory and riches. But it was not cliched yet in 1940, as the premises were still fresh. Moving to the expedition, the second mummy film was in search of the tomb of Princess Ananka, primarily guided by Steve Banning and B.B. Jensen's quest for spoils in Cairo. They are established to be amateurs. They are fooled into believing remnants of a broken vase as an important artifact by Andoheb, a professor of Egyptology at Cairo Museum. By the time the expedition starts, the search for funding and other resources enlarges the team with an American stage magician, Solyani, and his daughter Marta joining. They eventually stumble upon the tomb of Karas, the lover of Ananka. By the way, earlier in the movie, we see Andoheb as part of the lineage of priests who keep Karas alive by administering Tana's leaves to the mummy. So, the villains and heroes introduced. The rest of the plot is similar to the mummy movies you have seen. I am leaving it for you guys to watch. But remember that this is 1940, and that the film is one of the B movies that Universal had started experimenting with. 5. Abbott and Costello meet Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The homicidal maniac have been familiar for a long time, thanks to the genre-defining horror Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. With cinema getting popular, it was bound to get adapted. But how Universal adapted it has helped make the mood lighter and raise laughs by starring the legendary comedy duo of Bud Abbott and Lou Costello. So, we have Abbott and Costello playing the roles of two American policemen, Slim and Tubby, who are in London to, apparently, study the police method. The duo's tomfoolery leads them to get caught up in a brawl at a women's suffrage rally, along with the newspaper reporter Bruce Adams and a young activist, Vicki Edwards. They all eventually get jailed. Slim and Tubby are kicked out from the police force, while Dr. Jekyll bails out Adams and Edwards. Yes, the monster is introduced. But along with his jealousy towards the mutual attraction between Adams and Edwards, jealousy is never good news. It brings out Hyde, the monster, when Jekyll injects his newly developed potion to kill Adams. Although the plot can raise fears, we should not forget Abbott and Costello. Guess what? They decide to go on a clown quest of the monster, leading to laugh-out-loud levels of funny moments. Think Costello being turned into a giant mouse. By the time of the film, once the highest-paid entertainers in the world, Abbott and Costello were in the twilights of their career, being replaced by young bloods like Martin and Lewis. But with the film's release, the former proved that, till they are on the scene, they are the real bosses. 6. Jungle Captive. Jungle Captive culminates a little-known Universal series from the 1940s, Cheetah, the Ape Woman series. Many of us have watched, at one point in time, the B-movies from the golden age of the monster movies, and most of the time, we watch it for fun and not for pure horrors, as it was an altogether different era. Similarly, I would suggest Jungle Captive in the entire series for the fun value rather than the horror. Jungle Captive starts with a scene in the laboratory where a scientist, Dr. Stendhal, successfully concludes his experiment and restores life to a dead rabbit. The trope of experiments and monsters created out of it appears repetitive, right? But the fear of evil science was such among the people that the trope kept appearing. Back to the story. We see that Stendhal, underneath the garb of a good scientist, is a mad genius who wants to play God. Not content with his experiments with small animals, his muscle Moloch is sent to steal Ape Woman's body. Stendhal's assistants, Ann Forrester and Don Young, are pulled into his dangerous experiment as he uses Ann's blood and plans to use her brain to convert the Ape Woman like a human being. Into a human being. The premise is, in effect, creep, but the old formulas mixed with stock footage fail to raise much horror. Personally, I watched the movie apart from the fun for Rondo Hatton, a cult icon of the 1940s. Unlike his characteristic roles in the Universal films designed only to raise horrors, Hatton's Moloch gets dialogues and even passes a joke or two in the movie. The film explores kindness in Moloch under the monstrosity, different from many of its counterparts. 7. Dracula's Daughter. I still don't understand the resemblance or influence of Dracula's Guest, on which Dracula's Daughter was supposed to be based. The film is strikingly original and a worthy sequel to Dracula, which was surprisingly overlooked by the people, unfortunately. The film also acts as the last of Universal's first cycle of horror film, which started in the 1920s. How many of you wanted to see Dracula as not an antagonist, but a victim, and shed a tear when he was killed? I have often felt the brilliance of the storyline being the gray area it puts the audience into, torn between feeling hate and sympathy towards him. The sequel makes us even more troubled, as we are introduced to Dracula's daughter, Countess Maria Zaleska. She is shown to possess the longing to escape her father's curse and live as a normal human being. The film follows her painful attempt, starting from ritualistically burning Dracula's body to taking help from a psychiatrist, Dr. Jeffrey Garth. Each time when she succumbs to the bloodlust, we also feel the pain. How can a Dracula film be complete without a Renfield? Here, Sandor plays the role, but with a hidden motive, proves to be the deciding factor for Mariah in the climax. The film is unique for its time, particularly for the explicit lesbian subtext it explores. Even though it is a surprise how the film managed to pass the certification, the subtext could be one of the reasons it failed at the box office and fell into obscurity, resulting in being forgotten. The film may not be for the Puritan who wish to see the canon followed, but definitely for everyone else. 8. Son of Frankenstein. The film is the third in Universal's Frankenstein series. Kicks off the second phase of the Universal monster. The second phase was characterized by toning down the grimness in the plotline, bringing in peculiar new characters, and finally culminating in the first mashups of a universe in the monster mashup in the 1940s. Unlike the previous Bride of the Monster, we do not have a new creation of Frankenstein. Who we have is Baron Wolf von Frankenstein, the son of Henry Frankenstein. He inherits his family's ancestral castle, which he uses as a residence with his wife, Elsa, and son Peter. Here, they meet a strange cripple, Igor, lurking around, but what they don't know is the dark secret he harbors. By the way, Wolf does not have many friends in the village. Villagers still have not forgotten the terrors unleashed by his father's creation. The only person close to him in the town is a local police inspector, Crow, who eventually plays a crucial role in returning Wolf's desire to redeem his father's reputation. Like many others extended as a series, the film starts showing a weariness as the plot begins to stretch. Still, given the high benchmark set by the predecessor, the film comes off as a surprisingly good one. But what do you think? Should the series have ended with The Bride or continue with its explorations different from the canon?
Now what do you put it on for? Now take the mask off!
9. Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. By the time Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, the crossovers of monsters have already started. Oh, sorry for sounding like Charles Burton, director, that Abbott and Costello are the monsters. But no, not in the story at least. They actually stumble upon the other monsters to deliver what they do the best, sparking a laughter riot and beginning their meetups with the Universal monsters and actors. Moving on to what is what in the film. Abbott and Costello portray the role of two freight handlers, Chick Young and Wilbur Gray. The first monster we encounter is the Wolfman, who calls the duo, warning them of the latest shipment to McDougal's House of Horrors. And guess what? Crates have none other than Count Dracula and Frankenstein. Unfortunately, it is the duo who gets the warning. God save America. The film is off and running, and the monsters get released, and Chick and Wilbur getting mixed up in the ensuing chaos. Since Dracula always has a human servant, we soon see a lady scientist, Sandra Mornay, introduced to the scene. Dracula is on the lookout for a brain for the animated Frankenstein. Not just any brain, but one that is simple and dumb enough to obey his every order. You would have already guessed who the ideal candidate is. Fusion leads to one of the best horror comedies made. This is one of the reasons why the United States Library of Congress deemed it culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant.
You must first kill Eric, then yourself. Understand?
10. The Mad Ghoul. The Mad Ghoul is one of those films during the golden age that went unnoticed because it was intended to play second fiddle to higher budget movies. It was released as a B-movie, along with Son of Dracula as a double feature. Still, the movie managed to give the chills and creeps with its folkish setting, with the dead bodies piling up and humanity numbing as the World War raged on. It was not surprising that zombie movies were getting released in large numbers, but with science replacing myths and mystery. In this, almost a rehash of the Frankenstein lore, Dr. Alfred Morris replaces the scientist. His experiments and curiosity were primarily focused on an ancient nerve gas used by the Mayans to kill, as well as use the dead as their slaves later on. He takes in Ted Allison, his student, as his assistant, and successfully revives Morris's dead monkey, Jocko. However, things get worse for Ted, as the doctor develops a romantic interest in his girlfriend, Isabel Lewis. Morris converts Ted into the Ghoul, using him as a weapon to further his interests. Despite that, Ted regains his memories but, sadly, is unaware of his undead status. The rest of the film follows the mad scientist's pursuit of Isabel, conflicts that Ted undergoes. Most of the die-hard fans of Universal horrors amongst you would be familiar with George Zucco, one of the Stoke actors for Universal in that period. The very fact that he had a knack for playing sociopathic scientists, rarely giving a bad performance, automatically uplifts the film. The film had a perfect casting with everyone delivering too, but one can't blame someone if they think of the movie as a Zucco act, which says a lot. Conclusion. The golden age of monster movies happened at a time when the entire West and First World country were on the lookout for different means of escaping, just as one world war ended, the friction started, eventually leading to an even more deadlier second war. If not enough, the US was dealing with a rise in organized crime. Universal Studios started coming out with their first phase of monster movies at this juncture. Suddenly, there was something that the people could relate to, speaking about their fears and skepticism of science, and about the sociopaths fueling the war, but also proving to be an excellent escape from reality through fun. Today, we look back of the genre's origin. But don't you think that more than anything, it was the circumstances that paved the way for the rise of the monster? And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good and be safe. Thanks, everyone.